A young pharaoh's eyes close beneath layers of linen and gold. Yet for the ancient Egyptians, this moment signaled not an ending, but rather the threshold of a terrifying odyssey into realms unknown. A perilous passage where every soul would confront jackal-headed deities, face serpents wreathed in flame, and navigate doorways sealed by incantations older than memory itself. And waiting at journey's end? A set of scales, a single feather, and a judgment from which there could be no appeal. Have you ever wondered what truly awaited the dead in ancient Egypt? Why did they preserve bodies with such meticulous care? What mysteries lie hidden within those cryptic texts adorning tomb walls? Stay with us to the very end to uncover these secrets. And if these ancient enigmas captivate you as deeply as they do us, hit that subscribe button right now. We're about to journey deep into the darkest mysteries of the Egyptian underworld. Over 3 millennia ago, along the life-giving waters of the Nile, death represented not finality, but transformation. The Egyptians held an unshakable conviction that existence continued beyond physical form, though not in any simple fashion. Each soul faced a treacherous realm teeming with hostile entities and merciless sentinels. This domain bore a name whispered with both reverence and dread: the Duat. Its supreme authority was Osiris, sovereign of the deceased. Yet before standing in his presence, every departed spirit had to overcome trials testing not merely knowledge, but the very essence of their moral character. Picture yourself as an Egyptian nobleman. Your earthly days were filled with abundance. You commanded estates, oversaw monumental building projects, controlled the destinies of countless servants. Your word was law. Your enemies trembled. But that chapter has closed forever. Now your body lies motionless upon cold stone. Funerary priests move with practiced silence around you, their skilled hands performing sacred rituals passed down through generations. They extract your organs with ceremonial precision. Your brain is discarded without ceremony. They believed consciousness resided not in the mind, but in the heart. Your lungs, liver, stomach, and intestines are carefully washed, treated with preservatives, then sealed within canopic jars, each vessel under the protection of a different deity. Your heart, however, remains within your chest cavity. This singular organ will serve as witness, prosecutor, or savior in the trials ahead. For 70 sunrises and sunsets, your body undergoes treatment with natron, a desiccating salt that draws out every trace of moisture. Subsequently, it's wrapped in countless layers of the finest linen, while priests chant protective incantations designed to shield you in the afterlife. Each bandage bears inscribed fragments from the Book of the Dead, that comprehensive compilation of spells, mystical formulas, and dire warnings that every wealthy Egyptian endeavored to carry into the tomb. At last, your face receives a golden mask. You're placed within a sarcophagus adorned with hieroglyphic inscriptions. And then the authentic journey commences. Your Ka, that aspect of spirit representing vital force, and your Ba, embodying personality and individual essence, separate from corporeal form. Both must remain connected for you to maintain existence beyond death. But first, you must traverse the Duat. And trust me, this is no pleasant stroll through palace gardens. The Duat exists beyond conventional physical space as we comprehend it. It's a liminal dimension, occupying the boundary between existence and oblivion, between daylight and darkness. Egyptians envisioned it as a labyrinthine nightmare, rivers flowing with liquid fire, lakes whose waters transformed into razor-sharp blades, gateways guarded by demonic sentries. Every portal possesses its own name. Every guardian demands specific passwords. Should you lack the correct utterances, Should you fail to recite appropriate enchantments, you face eternal doom. This is precisely where the Book of the Dead proves invaluable. This text, familiar to us today through beautifully illustrated papyrus scrolls, functioned essentially as a survival manual for the afterlife. Access was far from universal. Only the wealthiest could afford having scribes copy these spells onto tomb walls or onto papyrus rolls accompanying the deceased. Each formula served distinct purposes: unsealing barriers, pacifying serpentine threats, summoning protection from minor deities, recalling the secret designation of demons to neutralize their power. Merely possessing the book was insufficient. You needed mastery of its contents. Consequently, from youth onward, upper-class Egyptians committed the most critical passages to memory. They understood that when the moment arrived, there would be no second chances, no opportunities for consultation. And so, after what might be days, possibly weeks, of wandering through the duat, evading monsters, reciting incantations, your soul finally reaches its destination, the Hall of Judgment, the Hall of Two Truths. Maat, goddess embodying justice itself, maintains her presence. And there, commanding the chamber's focus, stands Anubis. Anubis, the deity bearing a jackal's head, guardian of necropolis grounds, divine embalmer, weigher of hearts. His appearance is unmistakable. Skin black as the Nile's fertile soil, pointed ears perpetually alert, golden eyes that seem to penetrate directly into the soul's deepest recesses. He is not cruel in the conventional sense, yet neither does he show compassion. He is impartial, utterly, absolutely impartial. His sacred duty is weighing the deceased's heart upon the scales of justice, and resting in the opposing pan, a feather, the feather of Maat. This feather represents truth incarnate, cosmic harmony, universal order. It appears light, almost ethereal, yet it carries infinite moral weight. Should your heart prove heavier than the feather, it signifies a life saturated with deception, cruelty, and selfishness. Should it be lighter or achieve perfect equilibrium, then you have lived justly. Then you may proceed forward. But here comes the truly fascinating aspect. Before Anubis weighs your heart, you must perform a crucial ritual. You must proclaim your innocence. You must recite the negative confession, a catalog of 42 declarations wherein you deny committing specific transgressions. And you deliver this testimony before 42 divine judges, each representing a particular facet of Egyptian morality. I have committed no evil against humanity. I have not stolen. I have not inflicted suffering. I have not caused tears to flow. I have not performed impure acts. I have not spoken falsehoods. I have not taken offerings meant for the gods. I have not blasphemed. I have not acted with violence. I have not spread terror. Thus, the litany continues, statement after statement. Each phrase constitutes a solemn oath. Each word carries tremendous risk. Because your heart, that organ Egyptians considered the seat of consciousness itself, cannot deceive. If you've committed any of these acts, your heart knows. And when Anubis places it upon the scales, the weight of your deeds will be revealed with absolute clarity. And if you want to truly understand how Egyptians perceived good and evil, how they structured their moral universe, don't leave yet, because this gets even more intense. Subscribe if you haven't already, activate those notifications, and let's continue deeper. The scales stand before you. Anubis, with hands both firm and precise, takes your heart. He places it with infinite care into one pan. In the other rests the feather of Maat. Absolute silence descends. Thoth, the wisdom deity with an ibis head, holds his scribe's palette and brush, prepared to record the verdict. Osiris observes from his throne, wrapped in mummy bandages, the crook and flail crossed upon his chest. His gaze is serene, yet utterly final. The pans oscillate. Up, down. Your entire destiny hangs upon this movement. If equilibrium is achieved, if your heart and the feather weigh identically, then Thoth records it. Osiris nods approval. And you, purified soul, may pass into the Aru, the field of reeds, the Egyptian paradise where harvests never fail, where the Nile flows with perpetual abundance, where hunger, thirst, and suffering have no dominion. But should your heart prove heavier, then Ammit appears. The Devourer, a monstrous entity, a chimera combining three of the Nile's most feared predators: the head of a crocodile, the torso of a lion, the hindquarters of a hippopotamus. Ammit is no goddess. She receives no worship. No temples honor her name. She simply personifies annihilation. Should your heart be declared impure, Ammit devours it completely, and with it, she consumes your very existence. There is no hell in the Christian sense, no eternal torment. You simply cease to be, forever. This represented true death to the Egyptians, total extinction of the soul. This is precisely why mummification wasn't luxury, but spiritual necessity. Without a preserved body, the Keich had no home. Without offerings, the Ba had no sustenance. Without proper rituals, the soul wandered the duat, eternally lost. This explains why families bankrupted themselves on elaborate tombs, ornate sarcophagi, priests who would perform appropriate ceremonies. This is why pharaohs constructed pyramids, mastabas, rock-cut tombs in the Valley of Kings. Every stone, every hieroglyph, every statue represented an investment in eternity. Yet not everyone could afford such preparations. Peasants, craftsmen, the poor, they were buried in simple graves, sometimes with nothing more than a reed mat and a few pottery vessels. Did this mean they had no hope for the afterlife? Not necessarily. Egyptians professed that heart purity mattered more than material wealth. A poor but righteous person could pass judgment. A corrupt noble could not. Though admittedly, having access to the Book of the Dead certainly improved one's odds considerably. Now, Anubis wasn't always the primary death deity. In earlier times, before the pyramids, that role belonged to other minor gods, local deities. But with Egypt's unification and the rise of Osiris worship, Anubis became integrated into the official pantheon as divine embalmer and necropolis guardian. According to some myths, Anubis was son to Osiris and Nephthys, goddess of night. Other versions claim Ra as his father. What remains constant is his role: protector of the dead, guide through the duat, impartial judge. His image pervades Egyptian funerary art. On tomb walls, painted with mineral pigments that have endured millennia. In statues of limestone or wood, positioned beside sarcophagi. In amulets the living wore to invoke his protection. Anubis doesn't inspire fear in the Christian devil's sense. He inspires profound respect, because he is just. And that justice is inescapable. What about Osiris? How did he become Lord of the Dead? His story ranks among mythology's most compelling narratives. Osiris originated as an earthly king, benevolent and wise, who taught Egyptians agriculture, law, civilization itself. But his brother Set, god of chaos and desert wastes, envied him bitterly. Set engineered his destruction. He trapped Osiris in a coffin, cast it into the Nile, then dismembered the body into 14 pieces scattered across Egypt. Isis, Osiris's wife, traversed the entire country searching for her husband's remains. With Anubis's assistance, who performed history's first embalming, she succeeded in reassembling Osiris's body and restoring a form of life. Not earthly life, but eternal existence as ruler of the afterlife. Thus, Osiris became resurrection's symbol, death's conqueror, and Anubis, technical architect of that resurrection, became guardian for all who sought the same. This myth held profound significance for Egyptians. Osiris demonstrated that death wasn't the end, that with correct rituals, with appropriate words, with a pure heart, anyone could be reborn in the afterlife. And this message of hope proved so powerful it endured over 3,000 years. If you're finding this as fascinating as we are, don't forget to hit that like button. It helps us tremendously. And subscribe. We have so many more ancient Egyptian secrets to explore together. Now, the Book of the Dead wasn't a single standardized text. It was a collection of spells varying by era, region, and, crucially, the deceased's financial resources. Some papyri contained over 200 spells. Others, barely a dozen. But all shared one objective: helping the soul navigate the duat successfully. One of the most renowned is Spell 125, describing Osiris's judgment and the negative confession. Another is Spell 6, which animates Shabti figures, small statuettes meant to labor on behalf of the deceased in the afterlife. Yes, even Egyptian paradise required agricultural work. This is why the wealthy ensured they brought dozens, sometimes hundreds of Shabtis to perform labor in their stead. Other spells enabled transformation into various creatures: a falcon, a lotus flower, a minor deity. These transformations weren't whimsical. Each form served specific purposes. Becoming a falcon allowed the soul to soar above the duat's dangers. Becoming a lotus, symbol of rebirth, ensured resurrection. Egyptians conceived the afterlife as a realm of infinite possibilities, but also infinite perils. And magic was the essential survival tool, because yes, for Egyptians, magic was absolutely real, not superstition. It was science. Egyptian priests studied sacred texts, rituals, formulas for years. They knew which words to invoke, which gestures to perform, which offerings to present. And that knowledge was power, literally power over life and death. Imagine now you've passed the judgment. Your heart has been weighed. Amid retreats, disappointed, Osiris welcomes you. You pass through the final gates, and suddenly the duat's darkness dissipates. Before you stretch the fields of reeds, the Aru. It's an idealized landscape, green fields extending to the horizon, irrigated by crystalline water channels. Grain grows to impossible heights. Trees hang heavy with perpetual fruit. The sun shines eternally, yet without scorching heat. There is peace. There is abundance. And there, finally, you reunite with loved ones who preceded you. But it's not a place of complete idleness. Egyptians didn't conceive paradise as mystical contemplation. For them, happiness meant doing what they'd always done, but without earthly burdens, without disease, without famine, without injustice. This is why they brought into the tomb their favorite possessions, their tools, their games, even model servants and animals, everything they might need in the afterlife. And here we return to a crucial detail: offerings. For Egyptians, the dead still required nourishment. This is why tombs featured offering tables with bread, beer, meat, fruits, and why walls displayed painted scenes of banquets, harvests, cattle. These images weren't decorative. They were magical. If real offerings ceased arriving, the paintings could come alive and feed the deceased. Again, magic as practical solution. Some families hired funerary priests to perform regular rituals honoring their dead. These priests recited prayers, burned incense, poured libations. In exchange, they received portions of offerings. It was a complete economic system, sustained by faith in life's continuation after death. But what about non-Egyptians? Could they enter the Aru? Here the answer grows complex. Egyptians weren't particularly inclusive theologically. They believed their civilization, their religion, their gods were correct. Foreigners were viewed with suspicion. However, if a foreigner adopted Egyptian customs, learned the language, worshipped the Nile's gods, then they could aspire to the same destiny. Egyptian identity was more cultural than ethnic. And indeed, throughout centuries, many foreigners integrated into Egyptian society. Nubians, Libyans, Syrians, Greeks. Some achieved high positions, some were buried with full honors, and presumably if their hearts were pure, they also faced Anubis, were also weighed in the scales, also had their chance before Osiris. If you're wondering how we know all this, it's because the Egyptians left it written for us, in hieroglyphs carved into stone, in papyri preserved by the desert's dry climate, in tomb walls that remained sealed for millennia. Each archaeological discovery brings us closer to understanding their vision of the afterlife. And believe me, there are still secrets waiting to be unearthed. Subscribe so you don't miss any. One of the most significant discoveries was Tutankhamun's tomb, found in 1922 by Howard Carter. Though Tutankhamun was a minor pharaoh who reigned barely a decade and died young, his tomb was nearly intact. And what was found there proved astonishing. Solid gold sarcophagi, funerary masks that are ancient art masterpieces, amulets, statues, chariots, weapons, jewelry, and of course, texts, Book of the Dead fragments painted on walls, guiding the young pharaoh through his duat journey. Examination of Tutankhamun's mummy revealed fascinating details. His heart had been carefully preserved. The embalmers had done masterful work. Even after over 3,000 years, his facial features were recognizable beneath wrappings. Modern scientists, using scanners and DNA analysis, have reconstructed his life, his ailments, even his death's circumstances. But for ancient Egyptians, all that mattered less than one thing. Had he passed Anubis's judgment? Had he reached the Aru? They believed he had. That's why they buried him so carefully. That's why they filled his tomb with treasures. That's why they inscribed on walls the spells he would need. Because Tutankhamun was Pharaoh, Ra's son, intermediary between gods and men. And if anyone deserved eternal life, it was him. But even pharaohs feared judgment. Even they needed the Book of the Dead. Even their hearts could fail on the scales. Because before Anubis, before Ma'at's feather, no titles held value. Only the soul's truth mattered. And that's perhaps the deepest lesson we can extract from Egyptian funerary religion, that everyone, without exception, must face their actions' consequences. That justice, sooner or later, prevails. That earthly power is ephemeral, but heart purity is eternal. Egyptians took this belief to extremes that seem incredible today. They built the pyramids, antiquity's most colossal structures, as tombs for their kings. They spent fortunes on funerary temples, on statues, on rituals. They developed mummification techniques so advanced that some mummies have survived better than corpses buried mere centuries ago elsewhere. All this because they believed. Because for them, death wasn't the end. It was the most important examination of all. And Anubis was the examiner. Now, an intriguing fact. Throughout centuries, Anubis's figure evolved. In the Old Kingdom, he was the primary funerary god. But with Osiris worship's rise during the Middle Kingdom, his role shifted slightly. He was no longer supreme judge, but technical assistant, the one who weighed, who recorded, who guided. Osiris took the throne, but Anubis never lost his importance, because without him, judgment couldn't occur. Without him, there was no orderly transition between life and death. Even in later periods, when Egypt was conquered by Persians, then Greeks, then Romans, Anubis worship persisted. Greeks identified him with Hermes, the messenger god, creating a syncretic figure called Anubis. Romans adopted him into their own funerary rites. His image traveled throughout the Mediterranean, and though Egyptian temples were closed, though hieroglyphs were forgotten, Anubis survived in collective memory. Today, thousands of years later, we remain fascinated by him. His figure appears in museums, books, films, video games. And each time we see him, we remember something fundamental: that ancient Egyptians took death seriously in ways few civilizations have matched, that they built an entire cosmology around the afterlife, and that at that cosmology's center stood a jackal-headed god, holding scales, weighing hearts. If you've made it this far, thank you sincerely. This is exactly what drives us to continue researching, to keep telling these stories. Subscribe if you haven't yet, share the video with someone who loves history as much as you do, and leave us a comment. Do you think your heart would pass Anubis's judgment? Because ultimately, that's the question Egyptians pose to us across time. It doesn't matter how much gold you accumulate, how much power you wield, how many monuments you construct. The only thing that matters in the final moment is your heart's weight, and no spell, no magical formula can alter that. Anubis waits. The scales are ready. Mot's feather rests in the pan. And someday, all of us, in one way or another, will face our own judgment. Perhaps not with an Egyptian god, perhaps not with literal scales, but yes, with the truth of what we've been, what we've done, how we've lived. The ancient Egyptians knew this. That's why they lived with eyes fixed on eternity. That's why every action mattered. That's why the heart was sacred. And that's why, after more than 3,000 years, we continue learning from them. Thank you for joining us on this journey into the Egyptian underworld. See you in the next video. And remember, subscribe, because history never stops surprising us.